Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. I am Precious Chukudi. And of course, while we're still waiting for more results to trickle in, let's take a look at the front pages of the papers this morning. Starting off with Vanguard. Vanguard is leading with Sheriff, Yusuf, Nwifuru, Zulum, Mutfwang, others emerge governors. The writer says governors-elect extend olive branch to opponents, unveils plan for states, how Ganduje, Lalong, Tambuwa, Autumn, others anointed candidates failed. INEC declares Adamawa inconclusive, suspends collation in Abia, Enugu. On page 11, tension in Enugu, Abia as INEC halts result collation. Electoral officers escape lynching in Niger. On page 6, we have police confirmed killings of 2 officers by soldiers in Taraba. EU mission knocks INEC, says violence vote buying mad polls. 78 million Nigerian children risk water-related crisis. That's coming from UNICEF. We can also see a governorship contest table showing state candidates, votes, and status. All right, the stories above. We have banks borrowing from CBN down 14% to 453.7 billion naira. You can see that story on page 19. Also, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. The Nation is leading with APC wins 15 states, PDP 6, NNPP takes Kano. The writer says the Labour Party leads in Abia, Fubara, Otu, Oborivori are governors-elect. Stories above. Lagos okays 20% salary raise for workers, payment backdated, cash crisis, banking infrastructure for expansion. Expect new moon for Ramadan tomorrow, says Sultan. JAM sets new guidelines for direct entry registration. And of course, you can see a photo story showing Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu with supporters who came to congratulate him for his re-election victory at the Lagos House Marina. Polls inconclusive in Adamawa, Kebbi, Abia, Enugu. Foreign observers hail INEC. Music legend Dada Kwada dies at 120. Nnamani quits PDP. EFCC arrests 4 NCAA officials. Alright, let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian is leading with protests as INEC suspends election results in Adamawa, Abia, Enugu. The writer says the 2023 election lacked transparency, damaged public confidence in INEC, says EU. Sani Sule Oborivori, Fubara, Yusuf, others declared winners. We can also see the governorship election result sheets on the front page of the Guardian. INEC declares Kebbi gubernatorial election inconclusive. Lingering economic challenges pushes 44 firms off NGX list in 7 years. Thugs invade Kano APC secretariat. How Edoga's petition stopped declaration of Guba election winner in Enugu. Dissecting the Supreme Court in Lawan versus Machina. Lastly, on the front page of The Guardian, contributors receive a 208 billion naira as unemployment benefits in 6 months. So let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. The Punch is leading with APC wins 15 states, PDP 6, NNPP takes Kano. The writer says 27 killed nationwide in election violence, Togri, Ganduje Tambuwa candidates lose. PDP rejects Ogun Katsina result. Kwankwasiya supporters defy curfew, jubilate in Kano. INEC suspends Abia Enugu collation, declares Adamawa governorship poll inconclusive. And the map is showing how the various parties have taken over the map. On page 6, Sanwo-Olu raises civil servant salary by 20%. Lagos husband arraigned for wife's death. You can see that on page 4 and 5. Musician friend kill BDC operators, guard arrested. Stories above. EFCC grills 4 NCAA chiefs over alleged 2 billion naira fraud. Anger as NNPCL hires expatriates to head subsidiary. EU observers blame politician INEC for vote buying. And lastly, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, accept defeat. Delta governor electors Omar Gege. You can see that on page 12. And that's all we can take on the front pages of the papers. Join us after the break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We just joined us today in the news of Vanguard Life. I am Precious Chukudi. Joining me to talk about some of the stories on the front pages of the paper is Mr. Dayo Akintobi, publisher of Electoral today, Ikeja today, and Lekki today. It's good to have you join me this morning, sir.
Always a pleasure to be here. Good morning to our viewers.
All right, let's delve in. I mean, now we're in collation of results season, and everybody's trying to look out for who is winning in various states. And now, with the exception of Adamawa and Zamfara governors, 9 of the 11 governors seeking re-election have had their mandate renewed. What does this say about the power of incumbency?
Well, it's notoriously difficult to unseat an incumbent to begin with, because first of all, he's got the treasury of the state at his beck and call. He can unleash the vast treasury and the resources of the state in pursuit of his ambition. Then, secondly, by virtue of you already being there, you can run on your record. So if you did something good in the previous tenure, you can use that to put a carrot in front of the people to say, look at what I did while I was there. Even people who didn't do anything, they will whitewash the little achievements and blow them out of proportion like they're a lot more than what they actually achieved. You now compare that to somebody who is on the outside, who doesn't have a record to run on, who doesn't have the deep pockets of the state treasury, who doesn't have probably the political machinery. Because remember that when you are in government and you are a governor, a lot of people are already dependent on you. A lot of people look up to you. All the government workers, civil servants, political appointees, you are actually even the head of the political party in that state. So the entire machinery is available at your beck and call for you to deploy, to go out into the grassroots, to go and campaign for you. So you've got multiple advantages to where it's very difficult to unseat an incumbent. Of course, there's a corruption factor too, that the governor of a state can influence the state electoral officer. That's the truth. Can induce them with money, can induce them with promises. They have access to the state security, so they can actually use the security to their advantage. They can talk to the commissioner of police, talk to the army commandant in their state, and have security personnel deployed in certain ways that can either intimidate the opposition, suppress voters from coming out. You know, they can do so many things with the power of incumbency. I'm not surprised to see, I think he said 11 out of 13 so far have been re-elected. And I want to tell you something. In all likelihood, it doesn't mean that those 11 are popular or are liked or people want them to return. But the power of incumbency is what has propelled them back into office. It doesn't mean they are popular or that they are liked or that they did well in their first term. It just means the power of incumbency is formidable and very difficult to overcome.
Of course, there were some governors who could not deliver their anointed successors. Governors like Samuel Otom and Minu Tambuwa, Ganduje. What does this speak to for them?
Well, in some cases, it's probably the end of the road in terms of their political career, although some of them will try and remain relevant. I imagine that the ones who are in the ruling party, the ones among them who are in the APC, probably will get appointed, maybe get diplomat jobs, ambassador jobs, appointments, things like that. If the party looks on them with favor and says, oh, this guy tried for us, although his anointed successor didn't win, maybe we state. Maybe his successor didn't win, but we still won the state. Or maybe he campaigned well for the presidential candidate. Did some. So the party may try to compensate them. The fact that their successor did not win is not necessarily a blight on that governor person himself. It just depends on his relationship with the larger party. But what it does say to us who are political watchers is that the political capital of those people with the electorate, the political capital, because normally as a sitting governor, if you are liked, you should be able to influence the people to say, look, continuity, this person that I'm recommending to you will carry on with my policies. With all the good things I've done for you, this person will consolidate on them. So for them to have rejected that offer, it means that even that governor they were not happy with to begin with, they were not impressed with what he did or what he claimed to have done, during his previous tenure, and they're not interested in continuity. They want something different, something new. They want a change.
In Adamawa State, I mean, we've all been focusing on Adamawa to see what is going on there, especially because, on Sunday, there were like speculations that St. Obinani was going to be the governor elect there. All of a sudden, we heard that the result that was out was a rumored result that, gave her that stem of food. But then again, the major contenders have been trading blames with each other, that INEC is trying to alter the results in their own favor. And this is not the first time that Adamawa will be experiencing an inconclusive result. In 2019, that was the situation. What do you think about what's going on there?
Well, the contest is keen in Adamawa. They are neck and neck between APC and PDP. And of course, Adamawa is interested. The whole world is watching because it has the prospect of electing our first female governor, which is history. Also, remember that Zamfara is in the north, which is a notoriously patriarchal society, which means that it's male dominant. So for a woman to have even made the kind of inroads as to be a heartbeat away from winning the governorship is progress. It shows that we are open-minded, that issues of religion, gender, ethnicity are on the back burner. People are looking for performance. Who can give us a better life? Now, in Adamawa, the problem is some polling units were cancelled. The number of cancelled votes exceeds the gap between the first and the second. So in theory, if those votes were not cancelled, it could alter the result between who is leading and who is coming second. So for now, word is that the PDP candidate is leading by about 30,000 votes, but they cancelled 60-something thousand. So if those 60-something thousand were to be redone, if they have a rerun in those wards where the votes were cancelled not because of any fault of the voter. So why should the voter be penalized? That's the idea, is that the votes were cancelled because there's violence. People came in and scattered the polls, took the ballots, chased away the voters. So why should voters be disenfranchised through no fault of theirs? So INEC is looking at it and says we have to redo the polls in those cancelled polling units. So imagine now that they redo the 60-something thousand. Meanwhile, the gap between first and second is 30-something thousand. Don't you think those 60-something thousand could shift who is leading from who is coming second? So that's why it is inconclusive. If the 60-something thousand that was cancelled is only 10,000 and won't make a difference to the 30,000 gap, then they would declare. But because the number of cancelled exceeds the difference between first and second and could ultimately swing the direction of the leading, of who is leading, they have to rule it inconclusive. Now, why is Adamawa always in this situation? Last, I think 2019, the same thing happened in 2019, whereby it was a hair's breadth. There was contention. They had to be inconclusive. They had to go and do rerun. Well, what it goes to show is that the state is almost evenly balanced between two parties, and that is a razor's edge difference between which way it will swing. So it will always be close. That's why those cancelled votes matter a lot, because the difference between APC and PDP in Zamfara is very, very close. So we can't afford to disenfranchise anybody because that can change the result.
All right, let's talk about the tension in Enugu and Abia states, and INEC suspended collation of governorship results in those states, and also INEC had come out to say that some of its officials were held hostage as a result of the collation of the results. Even I think I just saw an update that shows that there's a protest going on in Enugu INEC office. What do you have to say about that?
It seems, well, sometimes you think about INEC's role, and sometimes it leaves a bitter taste in your mouth to say, look, is INEC really straightforward? Does it have integrity? Can we believe INEC? Because in those two states now, my understanding is that Labour is making a very strong showing. In fact, at some point, Abia had been declared, well, maybe not officially, but from those who are doing the collation privately, they had added up all the votes on IREF, all the votes from the situation rooms of the parties, and they had declared that Alex Oti of Labour Party won Abia. Then at the last minute, INEC is now coming in and saying, We have to suspend collation of the results because our workers were harassed. There was voter intimidation, all kinds of reasons. So, of course, those who stand to lose the most, those who are front runners, those who are leading as of the time it was counted, right, have reason to complain and say, why all of a sudden now that we are almost close to winning, you are now saying there are certain factors that are affecting the count. Could it also be a coincidence that is in the two states where Labour Party is having a strong showing and has a good chance to win that governorship, that INEC is now saying we are suspending? So of course people are crying foul that this looks like a conspiracy. It looks intentional. Why is it the two states that Labour is doing well, that all of a sudden they are now saying it's marked by violence, we are suspending counting, these results can't be relied on, and so on and so forth. So it just goes to show that whole aura of incompetence, irregularity, chaos, mismanagement of this whole election by INEC. I'm sure in the next story you're going to talk about, you talk about some foreign observers. You're going to mention that and their judgment of how the election went. But at the end of the day, when you look at it, beginning from the presidential, there have been too many complaints. There's been too much violence. As of yesterday, I heard about 14 people have been killed in this election, which is a monumental tragedy, 14 human lives. I remember President Goodluck Jonathan said the life of one Nigerian is not worth any election. One Nigerian. We now have 14 innocent lives that have been sacrificed because some people want to get into power. I'm not talking about how many have been injured, maimed, dislocated, run out of their homes, missing, kidnapped, harassed, intimidated. Many hundreds of thousands of people have been traumatized by this process. Why? Why is it so difficult to organize a free and fair contest where there are so many grievances, so many complaints? I don't think you can find anybody in Nigeria who will honestly, except those of course who won, who will honestly say that they are satisfied with INEC's conduct in this election. So there's too much disruption, too much mayhem, too much thuggery. So is it the security forces we are to blame? There's too many lapses in the process. The operational process of the election was fraught with too many lapses. So INEC has much to account for. INEC has a lot of explaining to do when this whole process is over. How can we, at this stage, 4 days after, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 3 days after the election, we still only have results in what? I think 17 out of 28, or maybe, so 10. 3 days after, 10 have not been declared yet. That is terrible. That's terrible. Whatever the cost may be, INEC has not lived up to expectation at all.
All right, let me take you back to Labour Party. During the presidential election, we saw how much states the Labour Party candidate was able to pull, and some political juggernauts wherever they were thinking that will be what will be seen across the governorship election, but that's not what has happened. In fact, the two states that Labour Party seems to be trying to grab, there's still a bit of struggle. What can you say about that scenario? Because it's beginning to look different. Like, okay, this is not what we thought would, pan out during the governorship elections.
Well, there are two main reasons. Of course, there's the issue of harassment, intimidation, and fear. That is very real because people were actually intimidated and the threat of violence was hanging around everywhere. Then I also have a theory that 1 week delay in the elections dampened the enthusiasm and the momentum. Because remember, after the presidential, there was 2 weeks before the scheduled original date. In those 2 weeks, the momentum was still high. Everybody was still campaigning. And of course, those who were shocked during the presidential election, like in Lagos and all these other places where Labour Party did well or where the incumbent party lost, like in Oyo, for example, where APC, the presidential vote went to APC, all the Senate seats. Those parties in the 2 week gap, they ramped up their electioneering and their campaigning and their bribing and their vote buying. They ramped it up. But at that time, Labour was still contending. But that extra 1 week, I think Labour ran out of steam in terms of the momentum, the passion, the energy. You can only be running at 100 miles per hour for so long before you run out of steam. So I think that 1 week ended up being negative, being harmful to the Labour Party in terms of its momentum. Then you look at it and you say, well, I think the ethnic card that was played had a role in keeping many people away from the polls. Of course, there was fear, there was division. All of those things definitely played a role in why Labour's showing was a bit poorer. Of course, there are some people who also tell you that there was rigging, that Labour actually did better than what we are seeing. I mean, look at the Lagos State candidate, for example. He said the results don't reflect the truth, that he won the election or that he had better numbers than what they showed. And he's alleging rigging. So who knows? Until the courts look at it, it's very possible that rigging was also responsible, that Labour actually did better than what is being reported, that perhaps the other two parties were able to rig Labour out. We will find out.
All right, so let's touch on this one, and of course, the European Union Election Observation Mission condemning INEC for failing to live up to the expectations in the country's electoral process, and they are saying that the election was marred by violence and vote buying. In yes, in the north, for example, I remember when we were talking to some of our correspondents, they said they are giving people wrappers as much as so that they can just vote for a particular party. They're giving people 2,000 naira. They're giving some 1,500. And you would want to think that the electorate are, they are well aware of what this entails, that in the next 4 years, this is what their life would be, by just selling their vote for, something as minute as 500 naira. And what you think about this and what the European Union observers are saying?
First, remember that in the run-up to the election, nobody had cash. So we were all poor. We didn't have cash, transfers were not going. So it was very easy to induce anybody with a small amount of money, especially in the poorer states, the states in the north, some of the ones in the middle belt where we have a lot of poor people. 500 naira, 1,000 naira, that'll feed a family of 4 for a week, So if they didn't have any money in the run-up to election, it was very easy to induce them with very little incentive. They will cave in. People haven't eaten for 2-3 days, Even in this very Lagos, somebody told me yesterday that they've been struggling with 1 meal a day for the last week because they have no cash. And none of the food sellers will take a transfer or will take POS. It's pure cash. So what do you do? So the EU monitors, for them to have come out with an indictment of the process, I don't think they are biased. I don't think they will be saying it's like that if it wasn't like that. I don't think they've been induced to say what they say. I think they are saying what they saw, right? Now, for me, I've gotten past this whole notion that until America or the UK or the EU says something is good, it means it's good. I've gotten out of that colonial straitjacket that says that the Oyibo man or the colonial master is the final arbiter of what is good and what is bad. So rather than EU, I would have been happier if it was AU, African Union, that came and observed and had this indictment because, like I said, I think we are too caught up in the Oyibo man's opinion. But nonetheless, for what it's worth, I don't think there's any agenda behind that report. Of course, the Europeans and the Americans have always had their agenda in the African continent. But in this particular case, I think it is what they saw that they reported. Why? Because we saw some of the very same things they are saying. The only thing is, by them saying it, it gives it an aura of legitimacy than when the local media is saying. When the local media is saying, what do you know? What are you talking about? But when an Oyibo man says it, it carries more weight. So, but by and large, if you look at the things in the EU report, they are the things that Nigerian media has been saying for the last 3 weeks since the presidential election. There's no difference. Saying that, look, this election did not meet up to global best practices. It did not meet up to global standards. There were lapses. There were irregularities. There was intimidation, voter suppression. There was vote buying. All the things we have alleged. Now, the issue is if all of those shortcomings or all of those nefarious activities were removed from the process, would the result have been different? That's the golden question to ask, is that those activities, did they alter the outcome? Because if they did, then the election is not free and fair. Then the will of the people has not prevailed. So that is why we should take those kind of reports seriously, because they reflect on the ultimate outcome. Even if they don't change, even if the outcome doesn't change by the time we go through all the court processes, at least those of us who are in the electorate will know that you, this person, you are not legitimate. You are not supposed to be there. You got there by hook or by crook, but we'll manage you after 4 years. We'll throw you out. You know, so I concur with the EU. If as unhappy as I am that it is them that is saying it, but I can't take away from any judgment they made in that report, because those are the same things that we also saw in the field.
All right, let's take a look at Mr. and Mrs. And Mrs. is speaking this one. She says, I asked for 50,000 naira and you gave me the exact amount. Other caring husbands would have added something extra, but my husband always behaves like the ATM. He dispenses the exact amount. And Mr. says, if you're not satisfied with that withdrawal, you are free to deposit. I was going to say go to court.
Go to court. Funnily enough, my wife accused me of that the other day. She said, nothing extra. I said, excuse me, please. You better be happy that I was even able to give you the exact amount you asked for. Extra in this low cash day and age. Where is the extra coming from? So, Mr., you have tried. Many of us at this point can't even give the exact amount Madam is asking for. Mr., I agree your own.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Daya Kintob, the publisher of Liquid today, Ikeja today, and Lekki today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Also, remember that you can equally like, share, and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen. Find out up-to-date stories. Go to our website, www.vanguardndia.com, to find out more on the election results still coming in. I am Precious Chukudi, and thank you for watching.